Good morning. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, Placer County Airport Land Use Commission, Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency, and the Placer County Local Transportation Authority. And today is Wednesday, May 27th, and we will begin with the flag salute by Pitt.
Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. We're going to start with roll call this morning.
Brown.
Here.
Cortez.
Present.
Davis. DeMattei.
Here.
Howdeshelt.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Wilkins. We have a quorum.
Okay. And will you, Madam Clerk, please explain the meeting procedures this morning?
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for being here. The meeting is being recorded. Agendas are available on the back table and on the PCTPA website. If you'd like to speak, please direct your comments to the board. If you're here in person, we ask that you come to the podium. If you're on Zoom, use the raised hand feature. If you're calling in, press *9 and we'll call you in order. Public comments on items not on the agenda will be heard during the public comment period in accordance with the Brown Act. Please keep comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record. A yellow light will signal 1 minute remaining, and a beep will indicate when time is up. Thanks for your participation.
Thank you. Item D, agenda review.
Madam Chair, the agenda remains unchanged since publication.
Okay, wonderful. We're going to move on to item E, approval of the minutes from March 25th, 2026. Everybody had a chance to look and,
A second.
okay, and no roll call, right? Nope. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, we're going to go on to item F, public comment. Persons may address the board on items not on this agenda. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anyone? Please. Good morning.
Hello. My name is Sarah Gorman, and I am the North State Representative for California Consulting. I was born and raised and currently reside in Shasta County, more specifically, Redding. California Consulting is the largest grant writing company in the state, and our grant writers have written more than 1,700 grant applications that have been awarded to our clients. Our team has generated more than $1.7 billion for our clients over the last 22 years. We have contracts with more than 250 cities, counties, school districts, special districts, and other public agencies. We conduct grant writing, grant reporting, and grant administration. Our grant writers specialize in writing large federal and state grant applications. We have written and funded the Active Transportation Program, Highway Safety Improvement Program, BRIC, Local Transportation Climate Adaptation Planning, Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant, and many other major grant applications. Our grants team also writes for Parks and Recreation, police departments, fire departments, economic development, community development, and many other topics. I have some business cards and postcards that I have left with you, and I encourage you to reach out to me so we can discuss grants for your agency. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you about our favorite topics, which is grants.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. We'll take one of your cards. Okay, anybody else? We don't do online, do we?
We do, and there is no one.
Okay, great. And we're going to move on to item G, the consent calendar for Placer County Transportation Planning Agency. Has everybody had a chance to review? Anyone want to pull anything off? No? Okay.
I move to approve.
Okay. Motion by Cortez, a second by
Brown.
Brown, sorry. I'm having a brain freeze this morning already. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, we're going to move on to item H, which is the next consent calendar for the Airport Land Use Commission. Everybody had a chance to look that over? Anybody want to pull it off to discuss? No? I have the motion?
I'll move to approve.
Okay. Motion by Cortez. Do I hear a? Second. Okay. Second by Wilkins. There you are. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. We're going to move to I, consent calendar for Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency. Anyone want to pull anything off of there? Okay, motion by Wilkins, second by DiMattei. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. And now we are on to item J, which is WPCTSA Administrative and Marketing Support Services Master Agreement and Letter of Task Agreement with Trinova. Is that it? Okay, and Mike is gonna.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, members of the board. This item is an action item before you today to approve an on-call administrative and marketing support contract, which the CTSA has currently engaged with Trinova since May of 2022 to provide these services. However, that master agreement and letter of task agreement, or LATA, does expire in June. So because of that, PCTPA actually released a request for proposals back in February, which closed in March. And we received 3 proposals that were evaluated, one from Trinova, the incumbent, as well as 2 others from DKS Associates and Drago Vantage LLC. Now, what had happened in this evaluation process is PCTPA actually convened an evaluation committee consisting of representatives from each of our 3 transit operators. One of those representatives was also the administrator of one of the CTSA programs, so there is a lot of value to having these representatives evaluate the proposals received. And those proposals were evaluated based on 4 major metrics. One being an understanding of what the CTSA does and the many programs that it operates and administers and how they complement existing transit services in our region. The other, of course, is managing similar programs, whether it be in the region or across the state. The third was just basic qualifications and experience in this realm of work. There is some unique qualifications in CTSA work dealing with some of the transportation programs and the different functions that CTSAs do. And then the last, of course, was cost and financial efficiency. We wanted to look at what some of the competitive, fully loaded billable rates were from the 3 proposals that we received. So based on these criteria, the evaluation committee unanimously recommended Trinova as the qualified agency to move forward. And basically, Trinova has been working with the CTSA since May of 2022, so there is that institutional knowledge and skill set that comes with having them remain as our on-call support provider, as well as the experience that Trinova has working with other CTSAs across the state in other regional counties such as Contra Costa and Stanislaus. And then lastly, Trinova does have a very competitive billable rate. Out of the 3 consulting firms that proposed, Trinova's rate was actually the lowest at a fully loaded rate. So with that, the CTSA's agreement with Trinova would be a base of 3 years with 2 one-year optional extensions. And then the LATA, or the letter of task agreement that's been prepared, would be to execute the first year of that initial 3-year base period. And then the budget, which you'll see in my next presentation, is based on $80,000 that's allocated in the CTSA budget, which has historically been allocated for this type of work and support. And all future LATAs, which will be initiated on an annual basis, will be based on what the CTSA budgets on an annual basis. With that, staff is recommending that the board authorize our executive director to negotiate and enter into a master agreement with Trinova and letter of task agreement for an amount not to exceed $80,000 for that first year term. And then the TAC was presented with this item, and the TAC, of course, consists of representatives from all of our region, and they did concur with staff's recommendation. I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
Okay, board members, questions? Bruce? No questions? Okay. Yes, please. I was going to move approval of the item. Well, first we just need to check and see if any public has anything to. Okay, all right, so motion by Wilkins. second by DiMattei. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, that was easy. We're going to move on to item K. Western Placer Consolidated Transportation Services Agency fiscal year 26-27 draft budget presentation. Take it away, Mike.
Thank you again, Madam Chair, and again, good morning. This item is only a presentation item. There will be no action taken by the board today. It is an annual, now I would say tradition, that the CTSA presents its budget to the board in May with the intention to bring the item to our board for approval in June as a consent item. So today I'll be going through the budget in a little more detail, and in June it'll be approved by the board on consent. The first item that I'd like to discuss for the CTSA's fiscal year 26-27 budget is our anticipated revenues. They're not anticipated to increase significantly. A lot of the increase comes in our local transportation funds that is tied to our apportionment, which the board sees in February. That is the initial apportionment of which the CTSA gets approximately 4.5% off the top from that apportionment in our region, as well as the state transit assistance funds. So those numbers, again, are dictated by our regional apportionment, and then our carryover is estimated carryover or savings that we're carrying over from this fiscal year into the next fiscal year, and that is the $1.1 million that you see. Overall, again, revenues are looking like about a 1% increase, and our anticipated carryover is cost savings that we're anticipating on year end that'll be carried over into next year to cover some of our programs. In terms of our budgeted administrative expenses, these again are more tied to direct staff costs as well as some marketing efforts and outreach. These costs decreased by approximately 4.5% in our proposed budget for next year, and that is due mainly to some of the planning efforts that are being concluded this year, like our bus stop facilities assessment and improvement plan efforts. Those are being concluded, and so we will have some savings in staff time for next year. And then our marketing outreach engagement costs are budgeted to be about the same for next year. Now, in terms of our core programs, which is the Placer Rides program, our South Placer Transit Information Call Center, and our Transit Training and Education program, you can see that those budgets are relatively remaining the same for next year. So there is no major change in those budgets. You can also see, based on the last item, that we have budgeted the $80,000 for on-call planning to support the CTSA's administrative and marketing efforts. And then you can also see that our countywide bus stop needs assessment, which we anticipate concluding next month, will be not having any budget towards going towards that project next year. In terms of Placer 211, this is a partnership that we have with the county to support the 211 services. We are proposing to remain budgeting for that effort. We are also proposing to carry over, and this has been carried over since fiscal year 2023, a one-time support for the South Placer Transit Express or Rapid Link project that will be administered by our partners at the City of Roseville, hopefully starting this fall, where you will see a soft launch of that service. And then we are actually looking at a new item, which is $300,000 proposed in this year's budget, and we anticipate allocating some future CTSA funds for a total of about a $600,000 planning effort to support long-range transit planning that will inform our future regional transportation plan and some of the assumptions that go into that 25-plus year planning document. And so this is something that our transit operators and our transit operators working group supported in this budget. And then lastly, we're also supporting the second year of a Regional Americans with Disability Act eligibility platform that is going to essentially serve as the mechanism by which users can qualify for paratransit services in our region for all three transit operators without having to go to each operator separately for that eligibility. So with that, one thing too that's important to note is we are maintaining an operating reserve. Last year it was a little over 20%. This year we're closer to 18% for fiscal year 26-27. This budget has been developed and prepared in coordination with our transit operators working group that met in April and in May. And as I mentioned earlier, our final budget will be brought to the board as a consent item next month. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Thank you. Board members, any questions? No? No questions? Guess we're doing good. Anyone in the public? Okay. Do I have a motion? I'll move. Okay.
There
I'm
is
sorry,
no
this
action
is,
on this
this is
item.
Oh, yeah,
not,
this is
you just,
just the information,
yes,
yeah.
just tell
We
me.
make a
what
motion
happened.
that Matt gave, gave a great, not Matt,
Mike.
gave a great report.
Yeah, yeah, here, here.
Matt Click and Mike Costa. That doesn't work.
Matt and
does it?
Mike. Mike and Matt.
I get the Mike Matt.
Okay, thank you and he just told me that. We're going to move on now to
Next action one.
item L, public hearing, public agency staffing, in accordance with Labor Code 3502.3 and the final fiscal year 2026-27 overall work program and budget. Jody.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. Today I'm going to present to you our final budget for the 26-27 fiscal year and discuss our any agency vacancies that we have. And just to get started, our OWP and budget is an annual plan, budget and management tool that outlines the use of our state, federal, and local funds and describes the planning activities and deliverables broken down by work elements for the fiscal year, which runs July 1st through June 30th. The original budget for this year was presented to you in January of this year. This is the final and will be updated at least twice during the 26-27 fiscal year, since this is a fluid document. Now on to our staffing as required by SB 2561, which is the second year of this public hearing requirement of discussing our any vacancies, which we have none. Our 25-26 fiscal year, we started out with 7 FTE. We are down to 6 FTE, and that was due to a retirement, which was not being backfilled. And this next fiscal year, we are remaining at 6 FTE with no change. And on to the budget assumptions. Not much changed since the original budget. There have been a few things. As I mentioned, we have a 6.0 FTE. 3% of COLA has been added to the salary schedule, and that is based on our personnel policy of being capped at 3% or what CPI is. CPI is tracking slightly less than 3%, and it'll be May to May, which hasn't been released yet, and it'll be adjusted once that is available and included in a budget amendment for next year. And also we have our local transportation funds, which have been adjusted to the preliminary apportionment, which Corey presented earlier this fiscal year. Caltrans does review our preliminary draft and all of our budgets and have come back with some comments. And the larger of the comments was adding into our introduction section the California Transportation Plan 2050 14 recommendations. They've asked us to identify which work elements fall into these 14 recommendations, and you can find that in the introductory section of our budget. And then the second is when we have a work element that is has multiple revenue sources. They wanted us to identify which expenditures are being paid with which revenue source, and that has also been updated in the document. And then moving on to our revenue changes, we did see an increase in our local transportation funds, or LTF funds. We did receive a federal Safe Streets and Roads grant for all for $100,000, and that is going to be used for Colfax Comprehensive Safety Action Plan. The State Route 49 sidewalk gap closure, which is getting close to being complete, we did increase some of the construction costs to help pay for the utility relocation. And I-80 aux lanes, which is Sparta reimbursed cost, has gone down $67,000 from the preliminary budget due to things moving along, and that project is winding down. And then here's a look at our expenditure changes that go along with the revenue that I just spoke about. The only one I did not speak about is our Placer County Evacuation and Transportation Resiliency Plan. We did see a reduction of our consultant costs as those are being spent in this current fiscal year and have been taken out of next year's budget. And this is just a quick look at an overview between this final budget and the preliminary. We are within our fund balance guidelines of no less than 2 months of expenditures. And we have a balanced budget that does have a surplus of $628,000. And a look at where our revenues come from. I always mention this, but 82% of these funds are received on a reimbursement basis, so cash is king, and it's good to have that ending fund balance available to pay our expenditures while we're waiting for reimbursement of those. And then a final look at where our expenditures are. 92% are direct costs that go to our work elements, and the remaining 8% are indirect or our operating costs. And that is it for my presentation, unless you have any questions.
Great, thank you. Board members, questions? No? No questions? Anyone in the public? Very concise. Okay, so this one is an action item. Do I hear a motion? Okay, motion by Wilkins, second by DiMattei. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item M, Placer County's Priority Project List Adoption for SACOG's 2026 STBG System Preservation Funding Program, period. Okay. Mr. Gosta.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and again, good morning, members of the board. I first want to start by saying this action item is the result of a very collaborative effort with your respective staffs that I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to, since we've been working on this effort all the way back of June of last year. And so, this resulting list that you'll see before you today is input and concurrence from all of your staff from that effort. But why are we here today? So PCTPA, as you know, is the Regional Transportation Planning Agency designated by the state for Placer County. That allows us to administer various amounts of state funding. Historically, we've also administered some federal funding, but that has been done through a process with a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, with the Sacramento Area Council of Governments, or SACOG. Back in the spring of 2021, we received a corrective action, or I should say SACOG received a corrective action from the Federal Highways Administration as well as the Federal Transit Administration to re-examine how they administer federal funding for the greater six-county region. And that, of course, includes Placer County and us as the RTPA. In July of 2023, again, based on this corrective action, the SACOG board actually approved a new process by which they administered federal funding, essentially removing Placer County's ability to administer some of the historic Surface Transportation Block Grant, or STBG, and the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant funds, or CMAQ funds, that we had done in the past for our region directly. So that process changed in July of 2023, and then in April of 2024, SACOG and PCTPA adopted a new MOU, which outlined the process by which federal funds would be administered in this region and how PCTPA responded to that effort. So SACOG in this new MOU is responsible for issuing a competitive call for projects for STBG, CMAQ, and other federal funds in our six-county region, including Placer County. But then PCTPA must submit a project prioritized list of applications that will be submitting for those competitive funds and how they rank, so that SACOG can see what our region deems a priority in their competitive funding round process. So that's why we're here today. So SACOG has 3 competitive funding programs that, again, deal with Surface Transportation Block or STBG grant funds, as well as Congestion Mitigation Air Quality or CMAQ funds. And those 3 programs have various call for project dates. The first one actually occurred for STBG System Preservation Funding Program, which launched in March and it closed on May 8th. And then the other 2 programs are expected to launch their call for projects for the competitive funding cycle in June. With the STBG System Preservation Program, that actually, when it was released, it identified $38.8 million available for the 6-county region, and those funds were available for fiscal years 2028 through 2030. And so projects that anticipated delivery or construction during those years are eligible for this funding. And then, as I mentioned before, we knew about this process following the MOU execution in 2024. So we've been working very closely with all of the jurisdictions in Placer County to prepare them for this competitive funding process that they haven't done before, and look at what types of projects are eligible, what types of projects are competitive. Again, we want to make sure that Placer gets a good share of the funding out of this $38.8 million in this funding program right now. So just a little bit about the evaluation criteria. Again, this is established by the SACOG board for the 6-county region. Projects that are more competitive are those that are shovel-ready projects, so looking at construction-ready projects. Also, applicants and applications and projects should show how they mitigate delivery risk. SACOG and the region wants to see projects that can be delivered without any, I would say, obstructions to delivery. So that includes right-of-way issues, that includes utility work issues. So projects that have found ways to mitigate those potential risks and ensure construction are identified as more competitive based on this evaluation criteria. Also, cost effectiveness is a very important factor. SACOG looks at, in their evaluation criteria, how do applicants propose to address the problem identified. For instance, in this STBG funding program, this is for road and maintenance treatment projects. Those are the most eligible projects for this funding. And so are the solutions that agencies are choosing for their road repair, are they cost effective? And there actually is a cost effective calculator that is applied to these applications. And then the other thing that SACOG's evaluation criteria looks at is how has this project been informed by your local community engagement and outreach efforts. So there actually has to be a connection and nexus between how the project is identified and how it's supported by your local community. And then lastly, there are some performance metrics and criteria around regional state of good repair, as well as other transportation performance goals like freight mobility or economic vitality that this project has to address in the evaluation criteria. So utilizing all of that evaluation criteria and working with our agencies collaboratively, there was 5 projects that were actually identified as both eligible and competitive in our region, which I'm presenting on this slide. Those projects were submitted by our partners at the City of Roseville, City of Auburn, as well as the County of Placer. And totaling, we had $10.2 million in grant funds requested for STBG system preservation. Again, that program is $38.8 million region-wide. So we are looking at about a third of that pot, but these are our priority projects identified and concurred by this region and your staff. So with that, as I mentioned before, the STBG System Preservation Program actually closed on May 8th. And so staff actually submitted a draft resolution, which is the same resolution included in your packet for this program to SACOG. And staff is recommending that the board approve a resolution formally adopting that project list that was shown before, and your respective agencies on our TAC did concur with this recommendation at their meeting on May 12th. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and I propose staff's recommendation for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Yep, I have a question. So you mentioned 38 million, we're a third of that 38 million. Sacramento County's big and active and, you know, shows their might at the SACOG board meetings. Who are we competing? What projects are we competing against? I mean, YOLO's got some needs. Yuba Sutter always wants to get our money to do their projects. Can you give a little perspective on how we stand competitively.
Yeah, I would say, again, this program is focused solely on road maintenance and repair work. Those are the eligible projects, and so those needs are 6-county wide.
Have you been in citrus sites lately?
There are definitely a lot of, I would say, roadway networks that might be in far less optimal conditions as we are. However, I will say that this program also looks at if a road network is so deteriorated past a certain pavement condition index or PCI, then those projects are actually more eligible for the STBG System Performance Program, which is being called in June. And so this really is looking at networks like ours and others across the region that are just trying to maintain within an average PCI range. And so I would say in that regard, we are competitive because our agencies do a really good job at maintaining their roadway network to ensure the long-term longevity of the network versus having to do major road reconstruction and repair. So that makes projects already more competitive in our region.
If I could, through the chair, also just, we haven't seen the other projects, right? Everybody is submitting at this point in time. So at this point in time, we do not know what we'll be competing against. What our goal is, very simply, is to make sure that we return all of the traditional level of federal funding back to Placer County and all of the jurisdictions. And this is the first of 3 shots of the funding pie. So what Mike has done in consultation with your staff has gone through that to put forward the right-sized project list and the right 5 projects inside of this bucket. We'll see where we come out, and then we'll sort of recalculate as well as we move into the next 2 funding rounds.
Yeah, thank you both, Mike and Matt. You know, my point was really, you know, there's some pretty robust conversations that happen in transportation, and there's some pretty detailed methodologies that SACOG has, and pavement index is one of those. So I just wanted to kind of daylight that aspect of it.
Supervisor DiMattei.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Mike, for that. On that project priority ranking number 5 for the Nicholas Road overlay, is that going to go all the way to the Placer County line for that? And if so, hopefully it's done better than it was about 12 years ago, because that road is shot. And whoever did that, it just seemed like they hurried through it, and you can definitely see the transition between Placer County and Sutter County. Ours looks like a road from the 1800s, and theirs looks like a brand new one. Kind of embarrassing to drive through there and see that in our own district. So hopefully that is done better than it was. I think it was 12 years ago it was done. So I don't know if the overlay is even enough to do that, because there's a lot of potholes, there's a lot of alligatoring there. So hopefully that we get this funded and it's repaired. So would like to stay on top of that one as well. So, but I appreciate the presentation.
Any other questions? No? Anyone in the public? Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion?
Oh, go ahead.
On behalf of Chair Jones and myself, who serve on SACOG board, I move approval of staff's recommendation.
I'll second.
Motion by Haudashelt, second by Cortez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Okay, we're going to move on to,
All right, let's see if we can spice this up. I know this has been a pretty administrative meeting, hasn't it? A lot of good work, though. So, hi, everybody. A little bit of a longer than normal executive director's report, because we haven't seen each other in a minute. But just wanted to report out on some things as far as cap to cap. A lot of you on the dais were with me in DC. I think we had a lot of good meetings. I personally prioritized my time with both Senate and House staffers in preparation for the upcoming transportation reauthorization. So I participated in meetings with EPW, the majority there. Those are the folks who were writing the bill, as far as also commerce, science, and transportation, and banking, housing, and urban affairs. You might say, why 3 different Senate committees? I think a lot of people forget that on the Senate side, there's actually 3 committees that write language for transportation reauthorization. On the House side, it all happens inside of TNI, but you've got to go talk to 3 different committees on the Senate side. So participate in conversations with all 4 of those committees in preparation for the transportation reauthorization. And moving to that new 5-year bill is out. It was dropped last Sunday and was being marked up, well, I guess 2 Sundays ago, and marked up as of Thursday. It's a solid 1,005 pages. So, you know, we ran it through AI and got some summary. But the truth is there's just some top level things because it will go through markup and it will change dramatically. But the big stuff to talk about is at a high level. They're looking at a top line amount of about $580 billion, which is in line with traditional reauthorization, with the exception of the last one, which was the Biden-era reauthorization during COVID, which had a broader definition of infrastructure and took us over that trillion mark. But we're about $580 billion right now, so a fairly balanced, a return to more of a traditional definition of what infrastructure is. And both houses and both parties will sort of have the traditional debates about how much stays at the state level, how much gets rolled down to MPOs, how much do we invest in roadways and bridges versus urban mass transit, those sorts of traditional things. But I mean, the bill is largely bipartisan relative to other things that occur in DC these days. But we are actively monitoring it with our federal advocates as well. Major grant categories have been taken down, so BUILD, which we were a recipient of and are an applicant this year, will go away. There will be no more BUILD, there will be no more RAISE, there will be no more MEGA. It's going to be brought into a new category that I'm going to spell and not say, and that's the STAG category. I don't know who came up with that one. Surface Transportation Accelerator Grants. So what you're seeing is a desire to collapse competitive grants and return to more formula funding. Another big one is the fact that they're looking at a federal EV registration fee, currently about $150 to replace the dwindling gas tax and the fact that we have all these EVs that aren't paying anything. So we'll see. We'll see what's going on with federal reauthorization. We'll keep you looped in. Moving back home to some local stuff as far as our 8065 interchange, we had our VE workshop in March, developed 20 unique project ideas, and as a reminder, this was to look at how we take the $800 million 8065 interchange and look to do something different and to bring it into something that is sort of fiscally achievable and in alignment with our grant cycles. So we came up with about 20 unique ideas. We prioritized that into top 3 or 4 near-term projects that are under $50 million. We're going to be giving you a recap of this presentation at the Sparta board here after that. If anybody does want to hang out and sit on the Sparta board to see that presentation, they're more than welcome. Moving on to grant activity, our USDOT, our RIA grant, our Regional Infrastructure Accelerator grant of $2 million. We did hear word last week we were not awarded, which you'll remember at our last board meeting, I gave you the wink that I had heard from, you know, well-placed sources in USDOT that we would not be, and that intelligence proved to be true. No award was made for the state of California. So welcome to an election year. Yeah. That's what's going on. That's the bottom line. And so that leads us to number 2. We're waiting to hear about our build grant for the Rockland Road interchange. Again, we'll see if it suffers the same fate, being that it's an election year. The CTC Active Transportation Plan, Corey is in the final drafts of working with the city of Rockland on that one. So that will be going in soon. And then, of course, David is leading the charge on the Solutions for Congested Corridor Program, Cycle 5. So we're still heavily into developing two separate grants at the state level. And you heard a good presentation already. I won't recap it from Mike on CTBG and CMAQ funding. Next slide, Mike. Small city funding legislation. AB 2679, last time we talked about this, I informed you that we couldn't even get it heard in committee. Since then, since we last met, we got a phone call, and Chair Wilson of the Transportation Committee really wanted to do something, but they did not like the idea of giving us a guaranteed minimum floor for small municipalities, which would have affected, in our jurisdiction, Colfax and Loomis. What they said, though, is they felt like they wanted to do something, but they did not like the precedent of setting a floor inside of the RMRA account. So they offered an alternative language, which our author, Assemblywoman Hadwick, wanted to accept, and of course, as the original sort of, we're not the sort of project or legislative sponsor, we agreed to. So now what the legislation does is it allows for a loan. So in other words, any small jurisdiction that receives under $200,000 a year could apply for a loan against future revenues. So while it does not generate new revenue for the jurisdiction, it gives them an ability to get a bunch of money at once, not let inflation eat into that, do a project, and then forego future years. So they can borrow up to 30 times their annual appropriation, sort of like a mortgage. That new language passed out of committee on consent with all yays, with no nays. So it's still moving through the process. I would imagine that AB 2679 will become law and be signed by the governor, which will allow for our smaller jurisdictions to have this sort of future loan program. So it's not everything we hoped for, but it's something, and it's getting us down the right path. State Road 65 Phase 1 improvements are moving forward. David and I are working at least weekly, sometimes daily, with Caltrans to get regulatory approvals and get everything we need so we can ready to list the project this fall and go under construction in spring of '27. The express toll lanes, the environmental revalidation of those are bundled with the Phase 1 improvements. So we're moving to get that done and have that environmentally cleared. I think we will have to make some determination as an agency that project's future. I think there's a future there, but the timing of that, because we did not get that RIA grant. So would we want to self-fund out of Sparta the design phase or things like that? Or do we want to focus on building out the build grant work and seeing where we are with 65 before we make a final decision on the express toll lanes? But the environmental revalidation is bundled together with the Phase 1 improvements and will be done this fall as well. Just a couple of few last quick points. The active transportation plan, it was on consent. You did adopt it. I just wanted to say thank you and remind everybody now that we have the first in the history of the county, a countywide active transportation plan. We will take that. And remember, our original intent was then to take those project lists, put them in, and we had 5% dedicated measure money and allocate that to bike ped projects. Because we don't have that measure money, what we'll now do is use that project list and that plan as the basis for which we'll then go seek grants through state and federal means. And also, you approved the revolving match fund, so thanks again to Corey for that. That was on consent. That's $800,000 for 4 projects. And I just want to finish up with, if you don't know, the Rural Counties Task Force is a subset of some of the RTPAs that are rural in nature. Placer PCTPA has been a member for some time, and what this does is it advises CTC on issues specifically affecting rural RTPAs. And of course, Placer, we've got a suburban part, but we've also got a big rural part as well. And Corey monitors and participates in RCTF on behalf of PCTPA. And I just want to publicly acknowledge and thank him that he's now been elected by his peers to the position of secretary for RCTF. So Corey's going to be secretary, and what that means is he'll move his way up, and then he'll be, first viceroy and second guru, and eventually he'll be in charge of RCTF. He'll be taking. I think AI is going to be taking some notes, but we'll see. But this is great. So it's a good feather in Corey's cap, and it's also good for PCTPA because it means we're just going to be at the table even more so and have an insight to the rural issues in and around California. And just in closing, I would want to let you all know that for July, it does look like we're going to be going dark. So I would say we're 95% confident we'll be going dark. So we'll get, Solvi will send out a formal note around that when it's official. But with that, I'll yield my time and answer any questions the board may have.
Board members, questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So the Phase 1 of
Yep.
65,
Yep.
Express toll lane,
Yep.
same footprint, correct?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just want to make sure,
Yep.
Because as you mentioned, them environmental approvals and revalidation,
The original intention, quickly, the original intention was we're already out there, let's not go out there twice, let's save a little
Right.
money. Let's not ask the biologist to go back out into the corridor again. So let's remark it all. And it was all environmentally cleared, so this was just the revalidation necessary because the amount of time that it expired relative to the Phase 1 build grant, the general purpose and auxiliary lanes, and with the express toll lanes, those were originally cleared as high occupancy vehicle lane, so the type of lane was different. So for those two purposes, we needed to revalidate, and we thought, let's do that once and not twice. But then the the Phase 1, which is southbound Blue Oaks to Galleria, a general purpose lane, and an auxiliary lane, right, from Pleasant Grove to Galleria, that project is 100% designed, and after this revalidation is done and we've checked it, we'll go right to construction.
I think by saying footprint, I wasn't clear on my question.
Yeah.
This is the same pavement.
No. The general purpose lane and the auxiliary lane are to the outside, and then in the middle, where you have that gravel, one day will be filled into the middle with an express toll lane. They are separate physical projects.
That
But
was
the
my-
environmental document will cover both projects.
And the BRT, Bus Rapid Transit, comes down.
Right now, the Rapid Link bus will be on the general purpose lanes. It will be stuck in the same congestion as the vehicles, and you're looking around the corner the right way, winking that when we get express toll lanes, we will then be able to run any future high-quality express bus down those free-flow express toll lanes, and that is a humongous transit benefit to Southwest Placer. But right now, the Rapid Link, it will be in normal traffic.
And perhaps too early to predict operationally, how often will that Rapid Link BRT run?
Mike, is it our headways?
It'll start at a soft launch at our headways, but the goal is to actually bring it up to 30-minute headways Monday through Friday.
Because that's fantastic, because as I mentioned last week at the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce and Government Affairs, it happened yesterday. I mean, we all get stuck. What did you call those lanes, those choke?
Trap lanes?
Trap lanes, right? With the Galleria traffic coming on there at Galleria Boulevard between there and Pleasant Grove,
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, the idea is, at the end of all of this, to have a multifunctional pipe where the auxiliary lanes facilitate interchange to interchange, very short trips, general purpose, normal trips, express lanes, high-value trips that people are willing to pay for, and public transit trips.
And so operationally, Phase 1, when will I be able to drive that?
It should be 18 months after spring of '27, so hopefully by the end of '29, you're on it.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yep.
Any other questions? Yes,
Just
please.
to make a comment, I know I'm just sliding in for Alice, but I want to recognize Corey for the active transportation plan. And I had the honor of being a stakeholder or a participant in the project. And I know it was like herding cats, getting feedback from all the organizations, taking comments, and I really appreciate the effort with the consultants and all the meetings and emails that you managed. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Chair, one more. Since Corey's name got mentioned, and this is a Mike Costa, Corey Peterson production, but I apologize if this is the first time I've noticed this, but on page 107, more 107 than 108, are we doing a different format on reporting on the freeway service patrol, or have we always noted how many RVs and motorhomes got removed by, I mean, this is very detailed, and I like it a lot, because, have we always reported it this way? And Solvi, I should recognize Solvi, because I have to recognize you, Solvi. The three of you, right? My apologies for having never caught the detail that's in this. That's fantastic.
Okay. Moving along. Okay, no other
One other
comments?
question.
Yes,
Sorry, Chair.
please.
You mentioned buses eventually going into the express lane, which is kind of a default to the express lane because the buses don't move very fast? And if this is a express lane to try and move traffic at higher normal speeds, not above the speed limit, how does that really become effective? Because everywhere I've seen larger areas, larger cities where the bus actually gets to go there, it seems like there's a whole line of cars behind them because they can't get past them and the bus obviously can't move as quickly as the cars do. So how does that benefit people who actually pay to get the express lane?
It's a great question, and it can be, it could be a problem. For instance, if you look at how these express lanes work around the U.S., the first one I worked on was in '04, and it was in Miami, and we made the decision to let Miami-Dade County public school buses in. And those things cannot get up to speed, and you got to worry about kids' safety, and so they were, and we eventually had to kick them out. And then taking that lesson and then working around the U.S., what you'll find now is like public school buses, you don't let them in those lanes because they cannot perform to it, and you run into this issue. To a normal public bus, like a City of Roseville or a Placer County bus, they can operate at speed, and usually it's a very limited number of operators who are doing it, and so you can have workshops with them and train them how to run the bus in the express lane. It is something that we would monitor, and let's say we ran into a problem where they were only running at 60 or 65, we would try to have those conversations with the public transit operator, because you do want the people who are buying all the excess capacity to receive value. That's the point. But typically, the public bus operator, and these would be physically delineated, so they would be able to run pretty quickly, pretty safely. Yeah.
Okay.
But it is something you have to monitor. It's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, as I still drive around today throughout Placer County, and whether I'm at the Galleria or wherever, and I see Roseville's buses and Placer County's buses all lined up, there's not enough people to put on one bus, and I see a lot of empty buses, and it just seems to me where we probably should, in modern times, move to having our dial-a-ride type of transportation available for people to get to point A to point B. Because it just seems like, to me, we're wasting a lot of time with drivers all around one person.
We have that?
Yeah.
We do, but it just seems like maybe it's not enough because we have drivers driving around by themselves in this big old bus.
I can understand the comment, and we do absolutely have the dial ride. And I think what you see at the Galleria is because it's a hub, you have a lot of different bus lines going to different places. And yeah, that big bus might only have 4 or 5 people on it. Whether you're running a big bus or you're running a small cutaway, what you learn over time, which is sort of cold comfort, is the biggest cost to that service is the labor, and the driver costs the same regardless of the size of the vehicle.
Right.
And I'm not trying to make excuses, but I'm trying to be transparent. There are just certain limits on those transit dollars and what you can spend them on, so you end up with these buses that, depending on the route, lots of times are not full. If we get back to the point of the express bus on State Road 65, we're going to have this 3-year pilot to see what sort of ridership it can get. Right, the express toll lanes won't even be open, so it'll be interesting. So we'll have data to understand what those needs are. And I would tell you today, is there going to be a large demand for premium riders, meaning riders who choose to get on, they don't have to get on in that corridor? Maybe not, but we're planning this for 10 to 12 to 15 years from now, when all of Lincoln's villages are built out, and Sac State is open, and that corridor, while we gripe about the congestion, in a decade from now, if we don't do anything, we'll miss the level of congestion we had now. And so what we want is we want to put that corridor down that really, as congestion builds, more people will select that express bus service that will have it'll have a time savings on the congested corridor. It'll go down, it'll get on an 80 HOV lane, and it'll get them down to Watt I-80, right? It'll get them into Sacramento, because it's highly unlikely we would ever build light rail, right, into Placer County. So this is really our opportunity to have higher quality, higher value transit in Southwest Placer in the future, and it's much more cost efficient than light rail ever would be. Would it fill up a bus today? Probably not, but in 10, 12, 15 years from now, it very well may. And if for some reason it doesn't, and we don't have the demand for a high amount of buses in that corridor, we're still allowing people as private motorists to buy their way in and pay their way out of congestion. So it'll serve the private automobile, and it'll also serve the public bus. So it's not going to be a bus-only lane, where if nobody showed up, it would be wasted pavement. We'll just allow buses into a lane where people in their private cars will be paying to basically buy their way out of congestion.
Yeah, I mean, not only do I see it there, but I see it right across the street too. When I leave this building, there's 3 or 4 buses stacked up, and
Yep.
there's 2 people there.
Yep.
So, just-
Yep,
to me,
I
it
would
just
say
doesn't
right now,
seem
those,
appropriate.
quite honestly, and the fact is that the majority of those folks on those buses are transit dependent, and they have to use the bus or they're walking down the hill. And there are federal programs and federal pots of money that, are given to us based on formula, and some we compete for, to provide that service to our residents. But yeah, when you look at a Placer County, which obviously has certain pockets of higher amounts of poverty, but when we have a 4% poverty rate, and our transit usage is under 1%, right?
Right.
But that will likely grow over time as we build out, and it'll likely build out where people who don't have to get on a bus will choose to get on a bus because they just don't want to drive in the congestion.
Right.
We probably won't see that for 10 or 15 years, but this is sort of planning the hardware around it, and later we can set the buses down on it. And if no one ever shows up, the buses can just be taken off of it.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking for the lower income population that's here in Placer County, we're making them walk to a bus stop. I'd rather see if we get more door-to-door service for them.
Yeah.
To save them time.
Yeah.
Instead of having to go walk 3 blocks, wait a half an hour. What could we do to make their life easier to get door-to-door instead of door to bus? And
Yeah.
it seems like it's a waste of time.
It's a tough one, and it's one that, obviously Mike deals with on a daily basis, overseeing and working with the operators on, fixed route and dial-a-ride and paratransit and all the senior stuff. And, right now, there's a lot of good fixed route, there's a lot of dial-a-ride for people in need, for elderly folks, things like that. There's not a lot of programs set up for, I'm an abled 20-year-old person, but I want someone to pick me up at my door and take me to work. Those sorts of programs.
Yeah, they could use Uber. They're fine.
What's that?
They could use their phone for that.
Yeah.
This is for people who actually need it.
Yeah,
Who can't afford to go buy a car, who don't have a job but need to get to a doctor's appointment.
yeah,
We shouldn't have them walk
Yeah.
4 blocks to get to a bus and wait. So,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
I think this is a point where Alice, if she were here, would say, boys, but, because she did that last time you and I had this
I know,
debate, I
we have
think.
fun up here together, it's fine.
Yeah, but I think the great promise for this, in my mind, is, and you make a valid point, but if you go to Sunsplash and you look at that, and this bus will stop at the healthcare centers, the healthcare region, and then go on. So I think there that's where the great promise is. So if you're a working, you're working at the hospital system, and you just don't want to, you don't want to be in the hospital system by coming down from Lincoln through 65. I think there's promise there, especially since you're talking about 1-hour headways, and frequency gives reliability, and people will go, okay, I can get there and get back. So anyway,
No, we've been dealing with traffic for 50-plus years.
I know.
It doesn't seem like in the last 50 years, people get out of their car and get on a bus. So it just seems like it's
I don't-
redundant topic.
We both have valid points, let's just say that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. The good thing is with this project, there is no sunk cost. It's not like you were laying down a light rail line. There's no sunk cost. And if transit doesn't utilize it, private automobiles will. Yeah.
So Matt, my question to you is the toll lane.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? I mean, what's the plan? How
Yeah.
much will it cost?
So the original idea with the express toll lane was to do a seed project, and this was to mirror what was originally in the measure as HOV lanes in the middle, and realizing that measure did not pass, and it's not likely to in the next 2 cycles. we only have two sources of revenue in the public sector. We have taxes and user fees, and tolls are just a user fee. And so the idea was to pivot from tax-based revenue to a user fee revenue for capacity expanding projects. And so the express toll lane, the seed project we picked was southbound because we have about 9 hours a day of congestion southbound and only about 90 minutes northbound, though it's growing and getting worse and worse and worse. Southbound was the priority. And we picked the corridor because, quite frankly, it was inside of the environmental footprint, and we didn't want to go outside of that because we'd have to start a whole new environmental document, and we would we would have to go and deal with VMT mitigation and CAPTI requirements based on the state of California. But because this corridor was already grandfathered in, we kept it inside of the footprint, and it's a starter project. It's a seed project to sort of prove the concept. So it's essentially just north of Blue Oaks to just south of Galleria, which is really the majority of that congested queue for those 9 hours. So as people are coming southbound in the morning or at any time, as they start to see the queue, they would be given a sign that says enter express lanes to I-80. They would be able to get in, go under a toll gantry, pay a toll, bypass that southern 65 congestion, merge back out past Galleria where it free flows, get onto 80 and be on their way. So that was the idea. Do that and then look to build the mirrored project on the northbound side and then go north of that on southbound and northbound direction closer to Lincoln. So that was the idea. That is going to be environmentally cleared this fall with the phase 1 project. We were going to look to then design it with the RIA funding that we were not awarded. So now we have to ask ourselves, do we want to, out of our Sparta pocket, spend our own money to design that and then get it construction ready so we can seek grant funding for the express toll lanes? And so that project is going to live, I believe. The question is a matter of timing. Remember, we were working these in parallel before we knew we got the build grant. And now that we've gotten the build grant, and we've been awarded that, do we want to focus? Well, we are going to focus on that, but do we want to proceed on the same timeline with the express toll lanes, or do we want to move that to the right? And by that I mean delay it or push it out a couple of years to see what the traffic impacts are of the build lanes, of the general purpose lanes in the same corridor. So that's sort of the sort of policy and financing decision in front of the agency. And so that's what we're sort of contemplating right now.
Sounds good. Do you have any idea of the cost it's going to be per drivers, or is that going to be based on the cost of the whole project?
It's a great question. It's the number one question you get, and here's the really snarky answer. It'll be what it needs to be to manage the traffic to 45 miles an hour and not a penny more. Will that be $3 or $4 or $5 or $6? It will really depend, because what you're going to do is you're going to set, it's not like when you go over the bridge into San Francisco, you pay $8. It's not a static fixed toll. That toll will vary based on how many people want to get in. So you're basically saying there's 1,800 spots an hour. You guys pick how much you think it's worth. And overnight, it might be worth a nickel. At 7 a.m. on a Monday, it might be worth a lot more than that. So that toll rate will vary. But we, or a public entity we partner with, would control that. So we wouldn't set it to maximize revenue, but we would set it just what it needs to be to keep the traffic moving, because that's the guarantee we would make. Because again, you don't have a motorist anymore, you have a customer. You have their credit card information. They expect a level of service for what they're going to pay you. But I could say that, around the US, sometimes you see those peak hour rates as much as $1 a mile. They can go that high. So, but I don't know, and it'll depend. But
Yeah, Route 66 in Virginia, after Cap to Cap, I went on that. I was like, holy.
Wasn't it
moly,
great?
Holy moly. And then you go down there and it's a different price, right? Because it's based on the segments
Yeah.
you're trying to travel through, so.
Yeah, that's a favorite.
So the boards will be set up like they are as you go into the bay, where you have options and the toll changes hourly, daily, 30 cents here, $4 here.
Yep.
And that should fluctuate throughout the day.
That,
And on traffic.
That is an option, and that is, I'll be quite frankly, what the traffic engineers love to do, because they think it's whiz-bang cool. I would tell you, I like the SR 91, where We would say, this is what it is from this hour to this hour to this hour to this hour.
Me too.
And then, one, you need a lot less hardware, and the effects are about the same, and it costs a lot less to operate. But you would have time of day pricing, but it wouldn't necessarily be variable. It would change, but it wouldn't change in response every 6 minutes.
Right.
So people could look and say, oh, if I get on, if I go in the lane at 7, it's let's say it's $5. But if I get in at 8, it's $4. If I get in at 9, it's $1. And they would, because there's a big equity component to that.
Right.
Because people want to know what they want to know what they're going to pay. But yes, it would vary based on predicted congestion.
The higher rate will get people through there faster. Cool, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to our next, got to find my page here. Board member comments, directions to staff. I just wanted to bring up the fact that at SACOG the other day, we talked about transit and the cost of transit. So the gentleman making the presentation put up a map of the United States to indicate any place in the U.S. where transit was paying for itself. There was nothing on that map anywhere. It was, yeah.
Yeah, it was consistent with the panel we had at Cap to Cap with WAPMA and the Virginia Transportation Agency, right? So.
It's astounding and amazing that we keep dumping and dumping and dumping all this money into transit instead of our roads. And our roads are suffering, and particularly in California, because we're not really, we're commuters. We don't ride transit.
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I don't think Houston solved their traffic congestion problem with 16 lanes double-decked, have they?
That was
That's not
I figured
rhetorical.
that was rhetorical.
That was a rhetorical
The
question.
Katy Way Freeway is 24 lanes, by the way. That's
24 lanes. Well,
Oh, Houston, I don't know. They're second in they got the #1 Philharmonic in America now. I know that. I don't know. Well, there you go.
Madam Chair, if I could dovetail off of
You bet.
yours. On May 15th, Capitol Corridor Joint Powers Authority Managing Director Rob Padgett and I had an opportunity to meet with the Federal Railroad Administrator in Sacramento, talk about the third track and talk about the Davis crossing. His special assistant is from this area. He ran a short track, no, that's for skaters, isn't it? Short line railroad in New England, ironically called Pan Am, because they bought the rights to the defunct Pan Am Airlines. And so anyway, we had an opportunity to, whisper in his ear late on a Friday afternoon after our celebrity waiter thing.
oh,
So
okay.
I earned my weekend, let's just say that.
Yes, Celebrity Waiter felt like 2 hours of straight calisthenics, right? By the end.
Correct.
Running around. Okay, well, if that's all everybody has to bring to the table, then we have informational items available in your packet, and we will adjourn